I'm Jim Dorsett, and I live in Dallas, Georgia, and I am a member of the Piedmont Division of the National Model Railroad Association and the North Atlanta O-Gauge Railroad Club, and I appreciate you dialing in to come visit my home and my layout. We're in the stairway coming down to the basement, and you can see some of the artwork I've got on the walls. And in my railroad, I modeled the Pennsylvania Railroad, Norfolk and Western, Southern Railway, and the Louisville and Nashville, and a little bit of interstate in Western Maryland. But I wanted to show you, like all of you, I got started in this hobby by Santa Claus when I was a kid, and it all started with these two right here. That was the first one I got, American Flyer Atlantic set. It's all die-cast. And then this was their finest locomotive, a UP Northern passenger train. All of these I bought with grass-cutting money, and I just held on to them all through the years. This is one that I always liked, never could have as a kid, and got it and held on to it. So that's what started me in the hobby, and I'm glad you came, and let's go look at the trains. Well, we're in the basement now, and I wanted to tell you that this is an O-scale model railroad on 3-rail track. I'm going to tell you very briefly how I got into doing that. When Mike's Train House came out with scale prototypical O-gauge models that had sound and smoke and all these various things, I was so captured by it that I just had to get into it. And I learned to not look at the third rail. And as time went along, I didn't see it anymore, as most people who are in this part of the hobby understand, because it is prototypical, it is scale model railroading, it's just a third rail, so don't look at it. Okay, this part where we're starting, this is out in the countryside. By the way, the name of my railroad is the Cumberland and Appalachian Railroad, and it's a tribute to the railroads that operated in the east in the mountains hauling coal and other merchandise. But my grandparents on my father's side were dairy farmers, and they were Borden's dairymen. And since I modeled the Pennsylvania Railroad, the Norfolk and Western, Southern L&N Interstate in Western Maryland, you can't hardly go into a farm in the southeast or the eastern in the Appalachians and not see a dairy farm or a barn that doesn't have Sea Rock City on it. So I duplicated a dairy farm in honor of my grandparents. The backdrop that you see on this railroad can be rolled up and put away. It's suspended from the ceiling by grommets, and it is from Backdrop Warehouse, and it's continuous, and it's about 60, almost 80 feet of continuous real photographs of an area in Pennsylvania. Now, the next area of the layout is a depiction of the town of Bristol, Tennessee, and Virginia. In Bristol, Tennessee, and Virginia, the Norfolk and Western and Southern Railroad actually interchanged, and the L&N wasn't far away. It's just a depiction of that area so that I could run the two railroads closely together. Some of the buildings are scratch built, a lot of them are from parts, and some of them I bought as they were from the manufacturer. The next section is still part of Bristol, and it's the engine servicing area, and as was typical for Norfolk and Western, they had what they called a lubritorium, which was an engine servicing facility, and this one's complete. That's the Bristol station on the other side. And then as we come further this way, we've got the roundhouse area and the turntable and the powerhouse. Interestingly enough, and strictly by accident, this looks very similar to the actual rail yard and servicing area in Bristol, Tennessee, because the main line goes right through the middle of it, which is unusual. I can promise you on my part that was accidental. We're going to head out into the countryside, and we're going into an area where the coal mining takes place. And the first thing that you'll see is this mountain here, which is, I have named Mount Clemens, which doesn't exist. But an interesting note here is it surrounds the furnace. I got the permission of the heating and air guy, and he told me how to do it. And you can see the handles on here and a little latch. It's on casters, and the whole thing rolls away, so you can get in there and service the furnace. In fact, I had to replace this furnace 2 years ago, and it worked like a charm. Now this river right here where the main line crosses on both sides is the Clinch River, which is a real river in the area, but of course some of the railroads actually negotiated it and some didn't. So now the trains enter the mountain and they actually come out over on this side, and you can see in the background little town of Mount Clemens. Behind it is the Brompton Coal Company, the coal tipple and mine, and the little village where the miners live. And as we come around to the right, it's just more of Mount Clemens. Now, one thing about this layout, it's a 40s and 50s era, but it's actually 1949 on this layout. And the reason for that is the newest car on the layout is a 1949 Ford. So we're looking down the highway that leads into the little town there, and of course it's not a big place, but they've got a motel and a diner and a gas station and a union hall and a few little businesses there. So there's a good bit of switching activity, not only for the coal mines, but also for other industries in the area. Now the area to the right as we pan around, and the big bridge that goes across, that's Stonewall Gap Overlook, and that's actually how I go into the inside of this layout. There is no Stonewall Gap Overlook, it's just made up in my mind. And you can see it's a two-track main line, which was typical on Norfolk and Western and Pennsylvania in some of their Western region areas. biggest challenge I faced in building this layout was learning simply how to do it. I'd never built one before. Everything I'd had up to this point was on the floor that I played with, and so I got books and studied them, and I became intrigued with a book that ironically one of our members, Peter Youngblood, co-authored with Joe Lesser, Operating Toy Trains Realistically, and I was intrigued with it, and that's what got me doing it. The part of the layout that I'm the most proud of would have to be the engine servicing area. It was fun building it. I did a lot of research on it to make it look prototypical of the Norfolk and Western Railroad and simultaneously with the Pennsylvania Railroad, and I'm proud of that. The aspect of model railroading that I enjoy the most, without question, is doing the detail work. I like to make things look real. I love to detail locomotives and rolling stock. Every dining car I have is completely furnished inside with place settings on all the tables, the waiters, everything in there. It's just like it would be even inside the sleeping cars, blankets, newspapers, magazines. I love the detail. I like to do that on engines. I like to do it when I build buildings, and the scratch building is fun to me. Unlike some people who've been in the hobby for years and maybe have built 2 or 3 layouts, if I had to do this all over again, as much as this has turned out to be a beautiful railroad and it operates wonderfully, I would never build it this way again. This railroad evolved because I really didn't know what I was doing. The first thing is it's 32 inches high. If I built another one, it would be at a minimum 42 to 48 inches high. And the next thing is I would build it in long islands where you could reach no further than about 2.5 to 3 feet in to work on things. As pretty as it is, it's difficult to get to fix or work on things and maintain stuff. That's the main thing that I would do differently. Because this hobby has so many facets to it. When I encounter something that's difficult for me, fortunately by belonging to the NMRA and the Piedmont Division here and the North Atlanta O-Gauge Railroad Club, I've got a multitude of friends who I can call who are experts in different parts of the hobby. That's what's fun about it. I have people who come to me to do detail work on their engines, build buildings, all this kind of stuff, but I'm not an electrical whiz. So when I have problems with that, I've got a friend named Wyatt Walker who completely wired this layout for me after I had done a sort of a spaghetti job. He went under there and cleaned it all up and got it working right. So I go to friends. I've subscribed to magazines like everybody, and I read the articles on how to do things better. But it's the contacts you make, the friends you make, the expertise they develop, and when I've got problems, I call them, and they come to the rescue. Thank you for coming today and looking at the layout, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you can see that you can do O-scale railroading on 3-rail track, and it's prototypical and very realistic looking. The beautiful thing about 3-rail is how easy for a non-electrical person like me it is to wire because of that center hot rail. It just makes it so easy, and there's so much available on the market. So thanks for coming, and hope you enjoy the rest of the tour this fall.